materials used in this project, check out the description below and click on Show More. There's some other good stuff down there, so you'll want to make sure you check it out. I'm going to begin my necklace with 3 beads. I have my 11-0 seed beads, I have 8-0 seed beads, and I have a 3mm glass pearl. I'm going to start by picking up a right angle weave section, starting with 1 8-0, one of my pearls, another 8-0, and another pearl. And I'm going to bring these down close to the end of my thread. And I'm going to do a little knot here, just to keep this all together so my little circle of beads here doesn't fall apart on me. I'm going to pass through one of my beads, and now I'm going to start picking up an 11-0 in between all of the beads that I have. So coming out of my pearl, I'm going to pick up one 11-0 and go through the 8-0. Picking up 11-0 and go through the pearl. So you'll notice that the 11-0 that you're adding is actually going to be sitting on top of the thread that's already stringing or already going through your beads. One more time here. And then again, here's the last time, picking up one 11-0 and going through that pearl. So you'll see you have something that looks like this. It's a little misshapen for a right angle weave section because these beads here, the 8-0s and the pearls aren't exactly the same size, so it looks a little funny. I'm going to continue and pass through my 11-0 seed bead. And now here I'm going to add another right angle weave section and do the same with the seed beads where I embellish the corners with that 11-0 seed bead. So here I'm going to pick up a pearl, an 8-0, a pearl, and another 8-0, and go back through this 11-0 seed bead. So you want to make sure that you're starting with your thread coming out of the 11-0 seed bead. And I'm going to go through the pearl just to get a nice tight pull on all my beads to make sure that everything's cinched together. And now I'm going to start picking up my 11-0s. So I've got one 11-0, and I'm going to go through the 8, an 11-0, and I'm going to go through the pearl, 11-0, and go through the 8-0. And now I don't need to pick up an 11-0 because I've got an 11-0 sitting right here. But the 11-0 is not sitting on thread that's running between my 8 and my pearl. So I have to add that thread right now. So instead of going through the 11-0, I'm going to go directly from my 8-0 seed bead to my pearl, skipping over the 11-0 seed bead. And continue on through to the 8-0 and through the 11-0 directly after it. So you'll see that you'll start to see that your 8-0s and your pearls start to align in diagonals here. I'm coming out of my piece here with my thread coming out the bottom of the 8-0, and sitting directly on top of that 8-0 is, or of that 11-0 is the 8-0. So I know that's the bead I'm going to start with when I pick up my next set of 4 beads. So I'm going to pick up an 8-0, a pearl, 8-0, and a pearl. and go back down through that 11-0 seed bead. And now I'm going to go through my 8-0. Pick up an 11-0 through the pearl, an 11-0 and through the 8-0, 11-0 and through the pearl. And now I'm back to the beginning, and I'm back to where the 8-0 here between my pearl and my or my 11-0 between the pearl and the 8-0 is not sitting on any thread. So I'm going to take my thread coming out of my pearl and go directly into the 8-0. So that will add that thread directly under the 11-0. And that just helps to keep those beads tight and close together. Coming out of my 8-0, I'm just going to pass on through my pearl and through the 11-0. And now here I'm in position to add another section. So this next section here, my pearl here is sitting directly behind my 11-0 here where my thread is coming out. So I'm going to pick up my pearl, my 8-0, my pearl, and my 8-0. And when I go back through my 11-0, now I've got my beads aligned where you can see that after adding this group of beads here, I now have my 2 green beads and I have my 2 peach beads, peach, green, peach, green. You'll see this stripe, diagonal stripe start to form. And around my 4 beads again, going through my pearl and picking up a seed bead, going through the 8-0, picking up a seed bead through the pearl, and picking up a seed bead and through the 8-0. And now here I am back at the beginning, and I'm going to skip over that 11-0 and go directly through my pearl. Go through my 8-0 and the 11-0 at the end. And now I'm in position to continue. So continue with this pattern until you get to between 12 and 15 inches. That's about how long you want this portion of the necklace to be. And then once we get to that point, once we've gotten this at the length that we want it, we will move on to the different section where we do some embellishment with some flowers and kind of fluff it up a bit. So now that you have your length now you have your necklace to the length that you want this portion of it, we're going to start on the section where we're going to add the flowers. This is about 13 inches long. So I want another 5 inches or so to get it to about the length that I want. And that'll get me about 18 inches plus probably add another inch or so for the clasp. So between an 18 and 19 inch necklace is what I should end up with. So here at the end, and again, I've got my threaded needle here already attached, I'm going to just pick up 5 inches of my 8-0 seed beads. So I'm going to go ahead and start picking these up and just letting these fall down. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here. So we'll do some little movie magic here so you don't have to watch me string all 5 inches of these. And as soon as I've got that strung, I will be right back and we'll continue. I now have my 5 inches of 8 seed beads strung, and I'm simply going to add my cup button now to create an end here. So we'll pick up a seed bead. I really didn't have to pick a seed bead because I already had a ton of seed beads there. But I'm going to pick up on this side here a few 11-ohs just to cover the holes of my cup button there. And then on this side here, I do want to pick up an 8-oh seed bead and skip one seed bead and go down through the next few seed beads and give that a nice tight tug to get everything nice and tight so you don't have any slack. So you can see this is what it looks like. I've got my cup button and a couple seed beads there, one coming out of each hole in the back. Now I am going to take my thread and I'm going to go back up through all of my 8-oh seed beads. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to make sure that this is going to be a nice, strong group or length of seed beads. So I want to have a little extra thread running through here. And I also want to make sure that it's tight and I don't really have any slack. A little slack is okay because we will be adding fringe. So we'll be going in and out. We don't want it to be so tight that we can't get a needle between the 8-oh seed beads, but we don't want it to be, we don't want a lot of slack that is really visible. Now here at the other end, I'm going to go through my 8-oh or my 11-oh here, my gold bead from the other direction. And that will sort of center the rest of my project here on that 8-oh or that 11-oh seed bead. And now I'm ready to start with adding some fringe. Go through an 8-oh. And now we're going to start picking up whatever beads we want to add for the fringe. So this part here is going to be pretty simple. I'm going to make a little bit of a mess here. I'm going to move my beads over here because this is much better for me. I am right-handed. Didn't think that through when I laid out my beads. So now I've got my 8-oh here in my hand, and I'm going to continue, or I'm going to start with this fringe section. I'm going to pick up one of my beads, one of my bell or flower beads, and you can really use anything that you want for this section, but this is the technique that you're going to use. One of my 11-oh seed beads or 15, whatever you want, either one should work, and then back through the 8-oh. So again, I'm coming up through an 8-oh and I'm going to pick up one of my bellflower beads and an 11-oh seed bead, and I'm going back through only the bellflower and the 8-oh. And as I pull through, I want to make sure that I'm pulling tight so that I don't have any extra thread, any slack in my thread. And I'm going up through the next 8-oh seed bead. So again here, picking up one of my bell beads, an 11-oh, back through the bell, and up through the next 8-oh. And as I pull that tight and hold my project, you'll see that I'm starting to add these beads that will cluster and sort of turn around on each other and look like a very nice little cluster of beads, of little flower beads growing along this section of my bracelet or of my necklace. So I'm going to continue here and do a little bit more. Now you can experiment with adding a bead before, adding an 8-oh before your bead, before your bell, and that will make your bell hang a little lower than some of the other ones. You can try some different fluff techniques that you're used to if you've done those before. So really anything goes here. We're just going to add an embellishment of beads, of flowers, all along this 8-0 section. So you can see I've made quite a bit of progress on my section here with the fringe. And using the same technique, I added all of my bell flowers, and I started also adding in some of these little green rondelles, just for something a little bit different. So now I'm all the way to the end. You can see here, you want to leave a little bit of room. You don't need to take your embellishment all the way up to the button. So you can leave 2, 3, 4 of your 8-0 seed beads without any fringe on them. And then as I approached my button, I went through my seed beads at the top and back down through the 8-0 on the other side here, just to reinforce the button at the end. I'm now going to do one more pass down towards my other beaded section of the necklace. And I'm going to embellish this a little bit more because I want it to be a little fluffier. You can stop at this point, but I am not going to. I'm going to keep going and take my needle and thread and pass through some 8-0s here until I get to the point where I want to start adding some more embellishment. I wanted some different colors. I wanted to add some more spring colors. So I grabbed a blue crystal and some amethyst rondelles. So in the same manner again, I'm simply going to pick up some beads. I think I'm just going to pick this guy up by himself. Whatever bead you want to embellish on this section of your bracelet. And again, just skip that 8-0 or that 11-0 through only your, this is a crystal round for me, and through the next 8-0. Now we went through every 8-0 and came up in between every 8-0 to make this dense and very dense, very fluffy. On your second pass down, you don't have to go through every 8-0. It's really going just to depend on how fluffy and how much you want to see or not see the line of 8-0 green 8-0s beneath. So this is really just a matter of personal preference at this point. But I'm going to work my way down here and continuing to add some beads in some different colors until I get all the way back down to where I started. And then I'll cut this off and I'll add a loop here at the end to complete my clasp for the cup button. I finished adding all of the extra beads and fluff to this section of the necklace. And you can see here where it meets the other beaded section of the necklace. I simply just tied it off and hid my thread end in some of this portion here as I went up with my thread and just did a couple knots and burned it down. So this section here is now complete. On the opposite end here, I'm going to add a loop to loop around my cup button. So I've added some new thread, and to do that I just used one of my beads down here as a stop bead and added some new thread. I have my thread coming out of this gold seed bead at the very end, and I picked up 26 of my 11-0 seed beads. And that should give me a nice size loop to go around my cup button. So once I have those 26 seed beads on, I'm going to go back through the 11-0 at the end of the project. And while I'm holding this tight, I'm just going to simply make sure that this is the right size and it easily goes over my cup button. Because if it doesn't for any reason, then I can change it right now before I reinforce it and do too much work on my project. So here I am going to go through all these beads again, and just to make sure that it is very well reinforced, because the clasp is always a section, typically it's a section that gets the most wear and tear, gets the most tugging and pulling. So we want to make sure that we give it a good fighting chance at surviving as long as it can. And go back through these seed beads here. I'm almost done. And at this point, you are essentially done. You don't have to do anything else. You've created that loop. You can tie it off, and you know that the loop works. But because this is such a embellished piece, what I'm going to do is put a little embellishment at the end here. So I'm going to go approximately halfway through my beads here. I've picked up 26. So my 13th bead would be where I would want to come out. And you can also kind of tell where that bead is if you just sort of line it up. So I'm going to go through my 13th bead, and I want to add a little embellishment, like I said. So I'm going to add one of my crystals. I'm going to pick up that crystal, pick up a seed bead, and go down through the crystal, back around the same seed bead, and up through the crystal again, through the seed bead, and back down the crystal again. And I can continue here going around the rest of my clasp here, the rest of my loop, and just pulling these thread ends out of the way so they don't get caught anywhere I don't want them caught. And that should be plenty to finish up my necklace. So now I've got a nice little embellished loop at the end that when I put it around my project, put it around my button here at the end, it'll blend right in with the rest of the fringe. And it'll serve to add any little fringe or embellishment that we didn't add here because we didn't want it too close to the cut button. So at this point now, all I have to do is tie off my thread. So I'm going to take my needle and thread, and I say I have another end that I can tie in with this one. So I'm going to get next to my other thread end here and just tie this off, a little overhand knot here, and do that a couple times. And I do like to take my thread ends and sort of bury them in the project if I have enough room, if they're long enough. And now once they are tied, I'm just going to trim those down. And any little thread ends that you had cut previously that you didn't get a chance to cut or trim down, go ahead and trim those down now. So there you have it. We have a long-ish, we have a 18, 19, 20 inch, whatever size you chose to do. We have a necklace here that when we bring the two sides together, you've got a nice beaded sort of flat chain in the back, and then in the front here, you've got a nice embellishment. And this you can really wear any number of ways. So you can wear it with the button to the side so that your embellishment is offset. You could even use it as a wrap bracelet if you want to. So lots of options here for how to adapt this to a piece that you want to wear for different occasions and with different outfits. So I hope you really enjoyed making it as much as I did. If you enjoyed this video, please comment below and let us know your thoughts. You can also subscribe to our channel to be notified as soon as we have more beading tutorials out that you will enjoy probably just as much as you enjoyed this one.